Optimus Prime doesn't suddenly become more violent in Transformers, and that's the part people usually misunderstand, because if you actually follow his progression across the first three films, what changes isn't just how he fights, it's how he approaches conflict entirely. Back in Transformers, Optimus is defined by restraint. He's powerful from the moment he arrives on Earth, but he doesn't operate like someone trying to dominate every situation. His role in that story is centered around protection and containment. The Autobots come to Earth to secure the Allspark and prevent it from falling into the wrong hands, and everything Optimus does is aligned with that objective. Even when Megatron enters the picture and the conflict escalates, Optimus doesn't shift into aggression. He stays consistent. He fights when he has to, but he never gives the impression that he's trying to overwhelm his enemies or prove superiority. His actions feel measured, controlled, and deliberate, which is what establishes him as a leader rather than just another combatant. That restraint is what defines his dynamic with Megatron in that first film. Megatron is aggressive, dominant, and constantly pushing forward, while Optimus acts as the counterbalance. Their fight isn't just about power, it's about approach. Megatron tries to overpower and impose control, while Optimus focuses on limiting damage and stopping him. Even when the situation becomes chaotic and the battle spreads across the city, Optimus doesn't lose that composure. He doesn't escalate beyond what's necessary, and that's what makes his presence feel stable. He isn't unpredictable, and he isn't reckless. He represents order in a situation that's constantly falling apart. That version of the character carries into the beginning of Transformers, Revenge of the Fallen, but this is where the shift starts to form, even if it isn't immediately obvious. At first, Optimus is still operating within the same framework. He's working alongside the military, responding to threats, and maintaining that same controlled approach to combat. But the scale of the conflict is different now. The Decepticons are more coordinated, the stakes are higher, and the pressure on him is increasing. He's no longer just protecting a single objective, he's constantly reacting to multiple threats at once, and that begins to push him into situations where restraint becomes harder to maintain. The forest fight is the first real indicator that something has changed. Optimus is outnumbered by Megatron, Starscream, and Grindor, and the situation forces him into a corner where he can't rely purely on defense anymore. He has to adapt, and that adaptation comes in the form of increased aggression. And from that point on, the fight becomes more direct and more intense. This isn't just Optimus trying to survive, it's Optimus actively dismantling the opposition. The difference is subtle, but it's there. He's still controlled, but the level of force he's willing to use has increased. He targets Grindor directly and eliminates him in a way that's far more forceful than anything seen in the first film.
God damn, nigga!
His death in that same fight reinforces that shift rather than resetting it. Optimus doesn't fall because he lacks strength. He falls because the situation overwhelms him. He's forced into a position where he has to take on multiple opponents at once, and even though he holds his own, the numbers eventually catch up. That moment doesn't weaken his character, it builds pressure on it. When he returns later in the film, that pressure carries forward. The final battle in Revenge of the Fallen shows what that pressure turns into. Optimus comes back stronger, but more importantly, he comes back more decisive. When he confronts Megatron again, the fight is no longer balanced in the same way it was before. Optimus takes control quickly, disables him, and removes him from the fight without hesitation. There's no prolonged exchange, no back-and-forth struggle. It's efficient and direct. Then he immediately shifts his focus to the Fallen and eliminates him just as decisively. The restraint is still there to a degree, but it's no longer the defining trait. Efficiency has replaced it, and that changes how his actions are perceived. By the time you reach Transformers, Dark of the Moon, that shift is fully realized. Optimus is still a leader, still aligned with the same goals, but his tolerance for prolonged conflict is gone. He's no longer trying to manage situations carefully or limit escalation wherever possible. Instead, he acts with a level of finality that wasn't present before. When he enters the battlefield in Chicago, his approach is immediate and forceful. There's no hesitation in how he engages enemies and no sense that he's holding anything back. That difference becomes most apparent in his final interactions with Megatron. In the first film, their fight is extended and competitive. In the second, it becomes shorter and more controlled. In the third, it's almost instantaneous. Megatron attempts to engage, but the outcome is decided almost immediately. Optimus doesn't prolong the fight, doesn't entertain the possibility of negotiation, and doesn't leave room for another outcome. He ends it. That's the key change. Optimus Prime didn't just become stronger across these three films. He became more decisive, more aggressive, and far less willing to hold back once a conflict reached its peak. In the first movie, he operates as a stabilizing force, focused on protection and containment. In the second, that stability begins to crack under pressure. forcing him to adapt. And in the third, that adaptation is complete. He no longer manages conflict, he resolves it. The movies never stop to point this out, and they never frame it as a transformation, but the progression is there from start to finish. Optimus doesn't abandon his ideals, but the way he enforces them changes significantly. What begins as restraint evolves into efficiency, and what was once a measured response becomes a decisive one. He didn't suddenly become a different character. He just stopped holding back.